The Green Acres cast made America laugh for 6 seasons on CBS. Every single one of them is dead now. The lead actor was a decorated war hero. His co-star ran a wig empire worth millions. The youngest cast member died in 2020 in Mississippi. Their real lives shock you. Number 1 is Eddie Albert, the man who played Oliver Wendell Douglas, the Manhattan attorney who dragged his wife to a farmhouse where nothing worked. The role suited him because his real life had been stranger than Hooterville. Albert was born Edward Albert Heimberger in Rock Island, Illinois, in 1906. He lost his first business career to the 1929 crash, then took odd jobs as a trapeze performer in a Mexican circus, an insurance salesman, and a nightclub singer. While performing high-wire stunts in Mexico, Albert was secretly photographing German U-boats in Mexican harbors for United States Army intelligence. When the war came, he enlisted in the Coast Guard in 1942, was discharged the next year to accept a commission as a lieutenant in the Naval Reserve, and in November 1943 he found himself off the coast of Tarawa. Marines were being slaughtered in the surf, dying within minutes of leaving their landing craft. Albert had been sent to recover equipment. He commandeered a boat instead, drove it through machine gun fire, and personally pulled 47 wounded Marines out of the water, then supervised the rescue of 30 more. The Bronze Star with Combat V followed. He did not speak about Tarawa in public until the 1990s. The Green Acres years made him a household name on top of a film career with 2 Oscar nominations, for Roman Holiday in 1953 and The Heartbreak Kid in 1972. He accumulated roughly $10 million across that career, while no specific Green Acres per episode figure was ever made public, and producer Paul Henning quietly built a rural comedy empire on 3 sitcoms at once. Eddie Albert died of pneumonia on May 26, 2005, at his Pacific Palisades home at age 99. His son Edward had set aside his own acting career to care for him through Alzheimer's. Eddie Albert is buried in Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park, Section D, Lot 61. Oliver Wendell Douglas was a city lawyer who could not handle a farm. Eddie Albert was a man who had pulled 47 wounded Marines out of the surf at Tarawa while the Pacific water turned dark around him. Lisa Douglas had a Hungarian accent, 5 husbands, and a wig company doing $30 million a year on the side. The actress was Eva Gabor. She arrived in California in 1939 with limited English, and her first husband a Swedish osteopath named Eric Drimmer. She had been an ice skater in Budapest. Her family was Jewish, and getting out of Hungary in 1939 was not a career move. It was survival. She started in B Pictures, worked her way to Broadway, and replaced Vivian Leigh in Tavarich in 1963. By the time Green Acres reached her in 1965, she was 46 and on her 4th marriage to textile millionaire Richard Brown, having decided to wed 2 hours after he proposed, with red buttons walking her down the aisle at the Hotel Flamingo in Las Vegas. While America watched her giggle her way through her botched bread pudding, Eva Gabor was building something quietly enormous on the side. Around 1969, she launched Eva Gabor International, the company that introduced the capless wig, lace strips replacing the heavy netting that had made earlier wigs sweaty and unwearable. By 1988, industry sources put company revenue at approximately $30 million per year, producing 1.3 million wigs annually, with retail prices from $35 to $110. Lisa Douglas was selling laughs at a CBS rate Eva never disclosed. The actress herself was selling wigs in Korea, China, and across Europe at margins her network bosses would have envied. She married 5 times in total. The 5th marriage to industrialist Frank Jameson ended in 1983, and from that point on she lived with television mogul Merv Griffin until her death. They traveled the world together. Once they planned a wedding with Nancy Reagan picked as matron of honor. In June 1995, Eva Gabor fell in a bathtub while vacationing in Mexico. She broke her hip. A respiratory infection developed at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles and turned into pneumonia. Gabor died on July 4, 1995, at age 76, the youngest of the 3 Gabor sisters and the first to go. Eddie Albert delivered the eulogy at Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Beverly Hills and joked that he had probably seen more of Eva than any of her 5 real husbands did. She is buried in Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park, just yards from Eddie Albert. Lisa Douglas was a Hungarian socialite who could not boil water. Eva Gabor was the CEO of a wig empire pulling $30 million a year while America underestimated her. The actor who wrote the one-line obituary of his own industry, CBS canceled everything with a tree in it, including Lassie, was Pat Buttram, who played the rolling store con artist Mr. Eustace Charlton Haney. Buttram described his own voice as sounding like a handful of gravel thrown in a mixmaster. And that gravel was the engine of every scene he stepped into. He could deliver a sales pitch with a face that promised honesty and hands that were already reaching for your wallet. Pat Buttram was born Maxwell Emmett Buttram in Addison, Alabama, in 1915, the second of 7 children of a traveling Methodist minister. His father moved the family to Nauvoo when Pat was a year old. The boy attended Mortimer Jordan High School, then enrolled at Birmingham Southern College, intending to study for the Methodist ministry. The pulpit was the family business. He had been raised to take it up himself. Instead, he discovered radio and stage work in college, became a regular on the WLS National Barn Dance broadcast in Chicago, and reached Hollywood in the 1940s. Gene Autry made him a sidekick on radio and television from 1950 through 1956. CBS ended his Green Acres run in 1971 with the Rural Purge, the network sweep that canceled every show with a tree in it. 6 years of network employment ended in a single executive meeting. His specific per-episode Green Acres pay was never disclosed, while producer Paul Henning, who owned Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, and Green Acres, accumulated enough syndication wealth to later donate more than 1,500 acres for a Missouri conservation area. Buttram pivoted to Disney voice work to keep paying bills. He gave his voice to 6 Disney animated films, including Napoleon the Hound in The Aristocats and the Sheriff of Nottingham Wolf in Robin Hood. He died of kidney failure on January 8, 1994, at UCLA Medical Center at age 78. His body was sent home to Alabama. He was buried at Maxwell Chapel United Methodist Church Cemetery in the Pebble community near Haleyville, the church tradition his father had served as a minister. Mr. Haney was a small-town con artist with a rolling store full of broken merchandise. Pat Buttram was a Methodist minister's son who came home to be buried in his father's church cemetery in rural Alabama. Frank Cady accomplished something nobody else in American television history has ever matched. From 1968 to 1969, he played the same character on 3 CBS sitcoms in the same week. Sam Drucker, the Hooterville general store owner, appeared on Petticoat Junction, Green Acres, and the Beverly Hillbillies all at once. Drucker was the one solid grown-up in town. He was the storekeeper, the postmaster, the newspaper publisher, the only person Oliver Wendell Douglas could finish a sentence with. Cady played him with the quiet authority of a man who had been behind that counter for 30 years. The performance was unshowy on purpose. Drucker was the rock the rest of the cast moved around. He was born Frank Randolph Cady in Susanville, California, in 1915, the youngest of 3 children. He worked at his local newspaper, the Lassen County Advocate, in high school. Cady studied journalism and drama at Stanford University, graduating in 1938, then spent that year in London, apprenticing at the Westminster Theatre and appearing on the BBC in the earliest tests of television technology. That fact is worth pausing on. Frank Cady appeared on television in 1938, when most American homes had never even seen the medium. He met his wife Shirley at Stanford while teaching acting. Then he served in the United States Army during World War II. Pay across all 3 of his sitcoms was character-actor scale. No specific per-episode figure was ever made public, while the 3 Paul Henning shows together generated the syndication revenue that built Henning's personal estate. When the 1971 Rural Purge ended his 3-show employment in a single decision, Cady kept working through guest spots before retiring with Shirley to Wilsonville, Oregon, in 1991. They took month-long hiking trips to Switzerland every year. Cady died at home in Wilsonville on June 8, 2012, at age 96. The cause was not released. His wife Shirley had died in 2008 after 68 years of marriage, and he outlived her by exactly 4 years. He is buried at Los Osos Valley Memorial Park in San Luis Obispo County, California, far from Hollywood, in the small coastal town his family had loved. Sam Drucker was the man behind the Hooterville General Store counter for 6 straight years. Frank Cady was a Stanford journalism graduate who had appeared on BBC television in 1938 and stayed married to one woman for 68 years. Sid Melton appeared in approximately 140 film and television projects across 60 years, and his only marriage was annulled. He played Alf Monroe on Green Acres, the carpenter who could not carpenter, sliding into every episode arguing with his sister Ralph about whether the door went up or down or sideways. Melton stood 5 feet 3 inches tall and used the rhythm of the Brooklyn Yiddish theater he had grown up around, which made every botched measurement funnier than it had any business being. He worked on the Douglas bedroom door for 6 straight seasons. The door never worked. Born Sidney Meltzer in Brooklyn, the son of Yiddish theater comedian Isidore Meltzer, he came up through Broadway in 1939 in See My Lawyer. His older brother, screenwriter Louis Meltzer, opened the Hollywood door for him with a small part in Shadow of the Thin Man in 1941. During World War II, he entertained American soldiers overseas, where he met screenwriter Aubrey Weisberg, who got him into Treasure of Monte Cristo for producer Robert Lippert. The Lippert contract was where the industry showed Sid Melton exactly what character actor pay would buy him. As Melton told the story years later, Lippert took the bulk of his pay, then tried to have Melton personally cover the income tax on money he had never actually received. An attorney named Eddie Rose threatened the IRS on his behalf. Lippert backed off the tax fraud but never paid Melton the difference he had pocketed. Across the rest of his career, he played Uncle Charlie Halper on The Danny Thomas Show, then turned up as Sophia Petrillo's long-dead husband Salvador in 8 flashback episodes of The Golden Girls. The work was steady, but the wealth was not. He married actress Jody Lee Myers in 1952, and the marriage was annulled. There were no children. In his later years, he lived alone in Burbank with a wire-haired terrier. On November 2, 2011, Melton died of pneumonia at age 94. He is buried at Mount Sinai Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles, the Jewish cemetery of the community he had spent his entire adult life in. Alf Monroe was the carpenter who could not measure a door. Sid Melton was a Brooklyn Yiddish theater son whose only marriage was annulled and who spent his final years in Burbank with a wire-haired terrier. Hit the subscribe button before the next entry. The man who played Hank Kimball had landed at Iwo Jima as a United States Marine, and one of his Green Acres co-stars was holding his hand when he died. The Hooterville County agent Hank Kimball could not remember a statement from one sentence to the next. The actor who played him was Alvy Moore, and Alvy Moore had been a United States Marine at the Battle of Iwo Jima. Hank Kimball would walk into a scene, make a statement, contradict it, then contradict the contradiction, until Oliver Wendell Douglas's eye started twitching. Moore played him as the most committed bureaucrat in American comedy, a man who clearly believed every contradictory thing he was saying at the moment he said it. Jack Alvin Moore was born in Vincennes, Indiana, in 1921, grew up in Terre Haute, and studied drama at Indiana State Teachers College. During World War II, he was a United States Marine and fought at Iwo Jima at age 23. He came home, trained at the Pasadena Playhouse, made his Broadway debut in Mr. Roberts opposite Henry Fonda, and toured with the play for 14 months. In 1970, the city of Vincennes proclaimed July 11th Alvy Moore Day and gave him the key to the city. Moore appeared in 142 of Green Acres' 170 episodes. His per-episode pay was character actor scale, while Paul Henning's 3 Filmways sitcoms collectively generated millions in syndication revenue across the decades that followed. After the 1971 rural purge, Moore worked steadily but never starred again. In his later years, he drove a white Chrysler with the license plate GRNACRS. That license plate was a clue. Green Acres had been the peak. Alvy Moore died of heart failure on May 4, 1997, at his Palm Desert home at age 75. His wife Carolyn was beside him. Former Green Acres co-star Tom Lester, who had played Eb Dawson, the Hooterville farmhand, drove down to Palm Desert specifically to be at his friend's bedside when he died. Two cast members of a 1960s farm comedy, 3 decades after the show ended, chose to be together at the end. Alvy Moore is buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills in the Columbarium of Remembrance. His marker reads, "Mr. Wonderful of Hollywood," a deadpan greeting he used when calling friends on the phone. Hank Kimball was a man who could not remember his own statements from one sentence to the next. Alvy Moore was a United States Marine who had landed at Iwo Jima at 23 years old, with his Green Acres co-star Tom Lester holding his hand when he died. If that kind of friendship between two co-stars 3 decades after a show ended does not stop you in your tracks, tell me in the comments. Who in your own life would still drive across a state to hold your hand? Mary Grace Canfield played Ralph Monroe, the female carpenter named Ralph because, as her brother Alf explained on the show, nobody in 1965 would hire a female handyman. She wore painter's overalls and greeted every Hootervillian with a cheerful "howdy doody" that had no business being as warm as it was. The performance is what she is remembered for. It is also what she privately resented. Canfield was born in Rochester, New York, in 1924, grew up in Pittsford, and spent the years before Green Acres trying to build a Broadway career. She appeared in several Broadway plays. Most of them ran no more than a month. She had poured herself into stage roles that demanded everything she had, and then took a sitcom role in 1965 that asked the least of her. In a 2006 interview, she said about being remembered as Ralph that it kind of upsets me, because the role had been so easy and undemanding, while the serious theater work she was proud of had been seen by almost nobody. In the years that followed, she worked steadily on Bewitched, General Hospital, and The Love Boat, always supporting, never lead. She married twice. Her second marriage to John Bishop, at age 65 on Swans Island, Maine, lasted 25 years until her death. Lung cancer took Mary Grace Canfield on February 15, 2014, at a hospice in Santa Barbara, California, at age 89. Her family kept her final resting place private. There is no public cemetery, no plot number, no marker the public can visit. Ralph Monroe was a small-town carpenter in painter's overalls. Mary Grace Canfield was a Broadway-trained actress who resented being remembered for the role that had asked the least of her and whose family chose to keep her grave a private matter after she was gone. He was the youngest of all of them. Tom Lester was 27 when Green Acres premiered in 1965, the only principal cast member under 30. He played Eb Dawson, the wide-eyed Hooterville farmhand who treated Mr. and Mrs. Douglas like surrogate parents, moving in with their chores and mistaking their patience for permission. Lester stood 6 feet 4 inches tall and spoke with a Mississippi drawl that made everything he said sound like a confession of pure goodwill. He appeared in 148 of the show's 170 episodes. Thomas William Lester was born in Laurel, Mississippi in 1938, the son of a Gulf oil accountant and a home interiors store manager. He grew up on his grandfather's farm. He had been a born-again Christian since age 10. Lester earned a chemistry and biology degree from the University of Mississippi, briefly taught school in Purcell, Oklahoma, then left for Los Angeles to chase acting. He beat out 400 other actors for the role of Eb Dawson. According to Lester himself, he won the part because he was the only auditioner who knew how to milk a cow. After Green Acres ended in 1971, the role typecast him so completely that he could not escape it. He did not get hired for anything substantial for the next 49 years. He took bit parts on Little House on the Prairie, Marcus Welby MD, and Knight Rider. Small work, far from a lead. Instead, Lester traveled the country as a Christian evangelist, preaching faith and obedience at churches and conventions for more than 50 years. Until his death, he kept showing up at fan conventions still dressed as Eb. The character that had paid him for 6 years kept him out of substantial work for the rest of his life. Tom Lester waited until age 68 to marry. It was a first marriage for both him and his wife Kaylee in July 2007. They lived together on the family farm in Vosburg, Mississippi. He had no children. He died on April 20, 2020, from complications of Parkinson's disease, at the Nashville home of his fiancée, and long-term caregiver Jackie Peters. He was 81. With his death, he became the last principal cast member of Green Acres to go. Lester is buried at Hickory Grove Cemetery in Laurel, Jones County, Mississippi, the same county he was born in 81 years earlier. His tombstone bears the inscription, Ebb of Green Acres. Ebb Dawson was the wide-eyed Hooterville farmhand who called the Douglases Mom and Dad. Tom Lester was a chemistry-trained Mississippi Christian who waited until 68 to marry, preached the gospel for 50 years, and was buried under a tombstone that called him by his character's name. They are scattered now: Westwood, Hollywood Hills, Mount Sinai, Los Osos, a Methodist churchyard in Alabama, a hospice grave kept secret, and a Mississippi cemetery where the tombstone reads Ebb.